يمكننا بالدراسة كالتالي وفي
It's on 20.
Hi, hello. No, it's not one.
Oh,
It only works with Mzungu voices.
okay.
I don't think so. Maybe after. When?
today for a monthly event that's hosted by the iHub research arm that basically happens for us to have intelligent discussions about certain topics relating to tech. And so today we are going to talk about journalism and technology and the interesting ways that journalism is impacting technology and how technology is impacting journalism. And so we're going to have a small primer on that from an iHub research fellow, Wamboy Wamunyo, an iHub research fellow. She also teaches at Daystar, and she's a doctoral student looking into the use of technology in mainstream journalism. So to start us off, first of all, the Wi-Fi password is iHub Nairobi. We're looking for an SSID iHub. The strongest Wi-Fi network and the best power points are in the front. So you guys at the back, if you could move to the front over here, you'll get the strongest Wi-Fi signal and there's a lot of power. You don't have to share points at the back there. Yes, people at the back there. Yes, and then of course now some housekeeping rules. If you would like to use the facilities, they'll be straight out and to the left. The nearest emergency exit is also straight out and to the left. You can go down the stairs. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Wamboy Wamunyo. Give a short primer to get us in the right space to start our conversation. Let's have a round of applause. She has a short presentation.
I don't know if it's a coincidence that we've been told about fire exits just before my presentation. I would take it personally. My work here is really to give a big picture. And before I do that, I actually want to appreciate iHub. As he said, I'm an iHub research fellow, but I also teach at Daystar University. And one of the things that we find when you work in a university is very hard to find a place to just sit and think. And iHub has given me a place to sit and think. So my greatest appreciation to iHub, even for this opportunity. I'm not going to talk about my research. He mentioned what I'm studying. But I'm going to talk kind of big picture. And my title is Creative Negotiation, Tech in the Kenyan Newsroom. And that topic, this one, is inspired by a scholar that I have read. His name is Francis Nyamjo, and maybe some of you are familiar with him. And Nyamjo has done a lot of work, intellectual work, a lot of scholarship, but his big thing related to this quote is his call for research that looks at the creative negotiation that we Africans are engaging in various ways. I think even this very building, and the people in this building are an expression of creative negotiation with technology. And I love that last quote, Africans are modernizing their indigeneities and indigenizing their modernities. And as we go along, hopefully we'll figure that out. But I think a very quick and easy example is, have you ever had the experience where somebody doesn't have money on their phone and they need to call you, or maybe you yourself? And what do we tend to do when we're in that situation? You need to talk to somebody and you don't have money on your phone. Please call me, or to use Kenyan language, Ebuni flash. You know, we talk about flashing, and I know non-Kenyans here may think we are getting a little obscene, but we are not. We are saying flashing is actually a terminology that has entered our language. That is the idea of you beep me so that I can call you back because I don't have any money on my phone. But I find that just a perfect example of what Joe is saying, that we have a modern gadget in the form of a phone, and then we are doing this, what Sunny Mitra calls, this peculiar thing that Kenyans do, and you found a way to interact with that very modern thing and give it a very local flavor. So my thought, even as I started my research, was um, what local flavors are being kind of incorporated in the technology that is being used. And by the way, technology is being used pervasively. I think we know that. I have research looks at the use of technology and governance. We have companies and people here who are developing technologies related to education, and so on and so forth. In our personal lives, we've just melded technology into the things that we do. And it's just interesting to me, how is that happening in the newsroom? But I'll first give you a big picture of our landscape, and my interest is not all media. I think today when we're talking about journalism, we have citizen journalism, we have kind of the mainstream thing going on. There's a whole mix. It's becoming very blurred. My focus is on those ones who have been there in the traditional sense. So this is the media landscape, where you see, this is from Bwire. Bwire is somebody who works at the Media Council, and these are figures from last year. These figures are a little fluid. I haven't updated them since I last looked at what was going on in terms of the media landscape, but I think we are generally there. We have 120 radio stations, and it is important, I think, for us to note that for the majority of Kenyans, I think even for many parts of Africa, radio is the medium. So I think when we come into a place like this, where we are used to very heavy talk on digital technology, it is helpful to remember that for a lot of people, they still get access to media content or news media content through radio. We had the digital migration controversy last year. Churchill, it's so nice that you're here. Maybe we'll talk about it. Churchill is from Nation Media Group, will be joining us. But since that time, we moved from like 17 TV stations to 43. And you know the ones, right? Noro, Gas, and so on and so forth. And what's interesting is now that we have programming in local languages on TV. We had that on radio. That was not a big thing, but now we have it on TV as well. And what I find very interesting is just the interest with which that media has captured the use of local languages. Then, of course, we have the daily papers. We have one evening daily paper. I don't know if that's still so. We have about 60 periodic publications. Again, this is according to Bwire. I think Bwire was not talking about publications like Gafla, NRBuzz, and such publications, which, by the way, are largely online, and they wouldn't fall under the mainstream media, so to speak. So that's the picture. But for all these that are here, all of them, like we who are using technology day to day, even they are using technology pervasively. And I think Nation Media Group will probably talk about that. And maybe I can even just say that Nation Media Group has been a pioneer, in a sense, in using technology and being very aggressive in incorporating technology in its work and its operations. Just a quick little note here. The Communications Authority of Kenya categorizes media into 3 basic categories. So of all these, they kind of generally fall under any one of the 3. There is commercial media, which comprises the bulk of the media that's here. So, Nation Media Group, Citizen, Radio Africa, and so on. And then you have the public broadcaster. Some people like to call it the state broadcaster. So it depends on what you think. And that's KBC, which is largely a broadcaster, both radio and TV. And then we have community media. And community media is comprised of non-profits that, at this point, I think they're largely radio. I haven't had a community TV yet. If there is, you'll maybe correct me. But community radio includes stations like university radio stations. There's a station called Coach FM based in Korogosho, and that is a community station for the community, by the community. Doesn't have a humongous reach, essentially non-profit and so on. But the majority, like I said, tend to be commercial media. And then one little note I'll just add is that I think, without having gone into too much research, KBC, the public broadcaster, and the community media tend to use even technology a little differently. First of all, resource-wise, I think the commercial media tends to be much richer, so to speak, so they can invest heavier. But the other thing I think community media particularly has done, because they are so small geographically, they tend to have a very community feel to their interactions in technology. So you'll see that they are more likely to be on Facebook, for example, whereas NTV will likely, use Twitter and Google Plus and whatever other technologies it will use. So it's kind of interesting. I haven't gotten too deep into that, so I won't comment on it. But I think that there's a difference in general operations. When we talk about technology, and even in our own lives, in those areas of research and even in journalism, I think there are particular ways of looking at it. Many of us look at technology as a transforming agent. It comes in and it will change everything. So even something like laptops for school kids, remember that project? I don't know how far it's gone. But I think laptops for children for standard ones was really this idea that it will transform something. But there's been other thinking around this line, and it says no, technology does not transform by itself. There are other things that go on in the process of things changing. It's not your mobile phone that will change education. There are other things that will happen along the way. It's more of a process rather than technology is the cause of things happening. And so there are people who view technology as a disruptive agent as opposed to a transformative agent. It's also a collaborative agent, meaning it is collaborating with other actors and other factors going on. So in my own research, I take this second view, and a lot of people are taking this view that let's not get assign too much power to technology. Even if let's talk about governance, which is a big area for I have research. Just because we all have mobile phones and can text and can exchange and can do all that, that does not mean we become more engaged citizens. So when we say that, we have a phone, so we'll be more engaged, that's transformative. That's a transformative attitude. But if you say, if we have a mobile phone, maybe we can see people changing patterns. And I think that's what the research, I have research looks at. Then that's the business of being more disruptive. And I think disruptive, collaborative agent, I think is a little more, it's closer to the situation than just purely transformative. So the disruptions then, if this is the argument, the disruptions that have happened thanks to digital, I'm talking about digital technology particularly. And this of course is, be it the hardware like the gadgets, or the software, or the web and apps and so. In Brazil, there's a similarity of behavior in how things work. So there's certain ways which will kind of go through a clinic, and then it will eventually be part of the journalist. But look at what's going on now. Today we talk about user-generated content, where it's in the newsroom who now wakes up thinking, all right, I'm using all the content. I think there's a lot of invitation from the media houses to content from the outside. But the research has shown that media houses are still a little resistant to using this user-generated content wholesale. It's also, a bit difficult. It's nice to get a picture of something that happened somewhere there, out there where the media couldn't be. It's nice to get the comments, etc., etc. But to have this regular, content, that's actually a big investment, and I think a big change in attitude. So you see UTC, but this whole business of who produces content, who produces news content. And then the going global, the idea of even like community media, where they have this global reach all of a sudden, where they only had a small geography and they are trying to reach more people, etc., etc. I was listening to Nation Media Group's CEO giving an investor briefing
It was one website. That time it was only meant to serve the Kenyan diaspora wherever they want. It was hardly any internet connection down here. The few guys who had it had to use a dial-up connection. I'm not even sure there's anybody in this room who might know what that is. Basically, connect your fixed phone into a modem, into your Windows 3.1, or one perfect kind of thing, and get going. Yeah. Today, we have more than 20 websites. We serve about 110 million pages every month. And we connect with 6 million accounts on social media across our networks. It's been a terrific journey, but we also know that we're not there yet. There are many guys who we are not reaching. There are many issues that we're not touching yet. And there are many people whose voices are not being heard. And that for us is important because for those of us who might know the history of the nation, it came to exist merely to give the indigenous Kenyan a voice. So that the whole purpose of giving voice to the voiceless is at the very core of why this stands today. Of course, we also pride ourselves to stand for quality journalism. Many times not all times, that takes some money. Therefore, we must find ways to make money in that process to fund that. The reality of the world is that as you do that, there is a disadvantage that get left out. And as Omoyo was talking about free basics, we begin to think of those guys. Not only are they getting left out in terms of the dialogue and the national debates that we have, the topics that we trend on Twitter, they're getting left out because they might not even have the guts and we will never come to that table and share a portion of that meal. Those are questions that I think as a nation, as a profession, as people who are out here, must decide to do. In our way, in our small way, to help deliver that journey, today nation newsrooms, we have invested quite a bit of money to help bridge that gap. One, to make sure that these stories that we do, we pay attention that they remain the stories of substance, not just stories driven by women, but stories that can help our society grow. But we are always working to see how do we get those stories to you quickest. That has meant that we tool our journalists differently. I remember when I was a young journalist, many years ago, I think some of us are not found. One of the biggest stories I covered as a very young journalist was the death of a gentleman called Jaramogi. Happened about 8 p.m. in the night. We got the story about 9 p.m. We were filing it on phone, on a telephone booth. I don't know if you all know what that is. The story was being taken on phone by the editor-in-chief in his office. We had the earpiece on one ear, with shoulder connected there, and was tapping away. Not on a computer, on a typewriter, or leave it and Google that brand. Yeah. The pictures that we took in that hospital in Kisumu that evening didn't get to Nairobi until the following day in the evening, because it hadn't come by bus. There's no email. Used to send it. Yeah. Today, and it played out, I think 3 years ago. There was a grenade attack on Moy Avenue. I don't know how many of us remember that. The site of that attack is very visible from the main newsroom at Nation Center. You stand on the window and you will see it. The fellow who broke that story to the virtual world was a passerby who took a picture and posted it on Facebook. That's the reality of the world we're in today. And that's the base case. We keep investing, make sure we connect to those audiences, and make sure that we do it in a manner that is useful to people. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll ask my boy to come up here so we can start the panel discussion. But before we do, I'd like to remind you that the hashtag for today's discussion is NRBuzz. So please engage with us online as well as offline here. And before we go into the panel discussion, I just want to share some insights from the online survey that we had you guys fill when you were registering. So just one or two snippets from that. So the first one would be that the majority of the people feel that news that's coming from nation's properties is insightful and informative. Business Daily specifically was called out and given compliments for its focus, its business, and lack of propaganda. It's an interesting thing to think about before we get into this. It was insightful and informative in general, and then now the Business Daily specifically was called out for its focus, its business, and the lack of propaganda. NTV specifically was identified for ease of access and global reach, and the East African was complimented for the depth of coverage. Majority of the people access sites on their phones or computers, or some combination of phones and computers. Mobile only will be 30%, computer only 30%, combination 28%, electronic paper 0.6%, and RSS feeds 0.3%. Majority of people follow Nation on Facebook, on social media, so that would be 64% of people who are following Nation on social media on Facebook, 48% of them are on Twitter, and YouTube covers 21%. So let's jump in. We have a seat first, yes. You guys need microphones? So before we open up now to the public in general, just want to ask a few questions. So I'll see. So we have again, we are anti-newspaper, paper, sorry. Yes. So in general, we've seen now from the statistics that are coming up that you're reaching people on different platforms. So what's the breakdown of how you're reaching people on the digital platforms? Are you reaching people on the app? From your perspective now, on the app, the websites, YouTube, what's the breakdown? How much of your resources are you splitting?
I'm not sure I have the accurate split, but a big chunk of the audience that come to us via social media, via desktop, and via the mobile sites. Yeah. Our app play so far has been to drive the e-paper. Yeah, we are looking at that, seeing what it means. But the journey up to now, our app game has been to drive the e-paper. Yeah.
Could I ask a question as a follow-up? How do you know who is real? With those analytics, those numbers, how do you know who is real, and how do you know how do you distinguish the bot from the person?
Difficult question, but I'm sure that Techies here could help us. Yeah. But one thing we know for sure, for instance, that the guys who comment on our stories, given that you have to process that and apply some, some intelligence to the issue that we converse in the story to put a comment to it. Many of them, I would hazard a guess of 99% are real people. Yeah. Once in a while, we see things pushing links, and we know those could be bots. But the larger majority are real people.
So generally, how I like that you mentioned that element. How are you managing the commenting? Because one of the differences between what I've called quote unquote traditional media and what we do now with social media generally is that traditional media has traditionally been about broadcasting. It's one side, and now digital platforms allow people now to respond. So how have you been managing now responses from people?
We basically have two views on that. On our assets owned by NMG, that means on our websites, when people comment, that comment will not appear until a nation journalist looks at it and sees to it that it conforms to our policies, and that policy is published online. On other platforms where we could be instigating conversations, but we don't own those platforms, for example, on Facebook, we do not moderate those comments. However, if somebody feels strongly that they've been in the comments there, or there's a debate going on there that doesn't serve the larger good, the bigger good of society, we'll go in and look at it. And based on what we see, we might delete some. Depending on how severe the case may be, there are people who will be blocked from commenting on our pages. So those are measures we take to just make sure that at the end of the day, there's a decent conversation happening.
I understand the Nation Media Group has a public editor. So how much feedback does it get from your assets?
The way a public editor works is a bit different, because he would go into those assets and see what people are saying, especially around the comments. But he takes the way he gives the readers and audiences who go to him directly tends to be a lot more. Because basically he's an ambassador of audiences, he's an ambassador of readers. So those who feel strong enough about their issues as to reach out to him directly tend to get more attention from him. But he would monitor what others are saying in whatever other spaces that he has access to.
Do you use any data derived from the media to drive your creation of content?
Absolutely, it's an old technique of journalism. Yeah, in the olden days, when editors put a story on the front page and that paper sold a lot more, the next time they encounter that story, they make sure they do the story well and that they play it out big. Today, we still look out for that, only that we have better tools to get that intelligence much quicker. So when we post a story and we realize many people are reading about it, many people are commenting about it, it's being shared a lot more, we would invest a lot more resources in making sure that we go in depth even more into that story. So such stories may find that they get follow-ups sooner rather than later.
So could this explain Joki Check?
No, how?
She drives a lot of content, a lot of conversation online. Everybody's talking about everything that she posts, every time that she posts the large number of comments.
It doesn't, the previous question doesn't explain Joki Check. What explains Joki Check is the fact that whatever she writes about, like it or you don't like it, somehow people read it and they react to it. And many times she goes into places that many of us would want to go into. She forces society to confront some questions that they may not be very happy to, that they otherwise would not want to confront. Yeah. But I know a lot of people that really have, but they still get those things to talk about all the same.
May I add something? I think from what we've seen research-wise, this is not about energy, but broadly, I think what we've seen is that the reliance or dependence on the numbers sometimes also kind of informs the choices that are made. The story that would end up on Daily Nation print on the front page may not be what will be the top or the front for the website because you're paying attention to those numbers. But the downside there is, I guess, for the media house, you're interested in driving numbers and eyeballs, so to speak. So that's an important thing. But the downside, broadly, the research has shown, is that you tend to get fluffier, more sensational stuff that gets hyped up because of that. That's what is driving traffic. So I think even the challenge for the news media house is balancing that need of providing, that public good, but also kind of bringing people. And what the people like, that's us. We like gossip, like sensational, like fun, they like it nice and easy. So that's an issue.
Okay. So again, now based on that, like, I've seen now the Nation Media Group specifically has a tech application that specifically goes directly to that. That would be now the Nairobi News. So again, are you using data to drive the stories that are coming out in Nairobi News?
Yes, I mean, it's more about audience segmentation. Yeah. Because there's a type of content that may not sit very well on the Daily Nation, for example, but it still has a real audience that is looking for it and that will get gratified by consuming it. And our internal research showed that the market, the audience that Nairobi News currently serves was left out. And we went our purpose to make sure that we target that audience and that we give them what they need without going outside our commandments, so to speak.
So basically that would mean now without straying too far away from the editorial policy of the...
Yeah, if you go back to the whole, what I described later as the whole purpose of journalism. Because journalism is not just about the technical skills of being able to write or shoot video or do audio and radio. There has to be an underlying purpose that drives why you do that. And that's a purpose that we keep coming back to. But even as we do all these things, we keep asking ourselves, how are we helping the society of ours grow? It might happen today, it might happen in 10 years' time. But that is the constant northern star that we take as the guiding principle. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting that you mentioned that. I wanted to ask you next. Now, when in her presentation had mentioned the rise of the content, and traditional media generally has been using, I would say, freelancers. So, how are you seeing that playing out now in the digital space? Is there even a difference generally between a freelancer working for the nation and somebody who's posting something? User-generated content, basically.
There's some difference. If you go back to the question of why are we here, yeah, you and I could both witness or observe or go through an experience, but our takeaway out of that, what we choose to amplify and give to the people we connect to, are very, very different. The freelancer who chooses to have an ongoing relationship with the nation is somebody who has accepted to subject themselves to the standards of the nation wants. The user-generated content guy is driven by his or her own standards. That really is the main difference. And where those two standards come to be in harmony, come to converge, the nation will find value in content from the UGC side. Where they diverge, then they stay in their place, we stay in our place, but we coexist. That's our view.
So there's a policy in place to help people share, for instance, because like you mentioned earlier now, like with the Moi blast, for instance, Moi Avenue, there might be video or there might be images that somebody just off the street has got that maybe your reporters don't. So there's a policy for introducing that content to the nation. Now, is there a remuneration for somebody for that?
Absolutely, and we do that all the time. Yeah? Where we find that you have something that is unique, and we can get it to go out on our platforms, we come to an agreement with you so that you can give us those rights. Yeah? Because the same way we wouldn't want anybody to use our content without getting rights to it. Ourselves too wouldn't want to use your content without getting rights to it. That is the rule. That's the rule book in the office. Those who, like everywhere, those who've gone outside that rule book have had to bear the consequences of that comes. Yeah.
So from now, switch us back to technology. What would a young journalist, like you mentioned when you were starting out now, your toolkit must have included coins for the phone box, for instance. So, like, what does a young journalist?
Those days was something called a reverse call. Or a target. You call the operator at telecom house and request them to connect to that person, and person we requested to take away the cost of the call. Yeah.
So what does the toolkit journalist setting out right now at Mission look like? What are the tools that they use?
For I would say 3 to 4 years now, the basic tool for a journalist at the Nation Media Group has become this, the smartphone. Yeah. In fact, when we were launching it, the company bought smartphones for journalists in the field. Yeah, at a very, very fair rate to them. Our view was very clear, that relevant, and if you're going to attain the value that you're trying to drive and deliver and make our journalists perform, then they must be equipped with the right tools. Today, whenever nation journalists go out to report, the one thing they make sure they have and is in working order is their smartphones. Yeah. And working order means that you know that it's charged, that the charge can last you for the length of the duration of the function of the story you're covering, and that your bundles can actually transmit what you get. And what comes with it is also tips on how to use it. Because the fact that I have it on my pocket doesn't mean that I can apply it in a manner that is useful to my work. And that's an ongoing journey, it's an ongoing process. And it's something we're giving both the guys, we call them the dinosaurs, guys who've taken forever doing journalism and gotten used to a different style of journalism. And also the new guys who are just coming in and learning the game.
May I just say something there? It's interesting that you're saying that today the journalists must be able to use your mobile phone. And I think you even want people to send stuff on mobile phone first, send something for the online site, then come back to the newsroom and do the bigger story for radio, TV, and print. And I guess this has come out with this thing of multi-skilling. You must be multi-skilled. But I think the research has also shown that the multi-skilled pressures, because of also the rolling deadlines during the course of the day, they're actually creating a lot of stress in the journalists. It's harder. I mean, we had many deadlines before. Now you have even more, so to speak, because of all these platforms. So I guess, I know you'll want to open this up, but is this a concern? And are you finding that maybe not everyone is cut out to do this job after all, whereas before it was friendlier?
Absolutely. Not everyone is cut out. But in this life, you can be nice, but you also have to confront the reality. The story just needs to be told in a manner that is relevant and that the audience will find useful. So either you can tell it in that manner or you cannot. That really is the bottom line. Because the age you are in today, if I'm taking it as from a labor dimension, if I'm going to market my skills and knowledge and experience to an employer, then I'd better be able to deliver what that market would. Otherwise, my goods or services won't be bought. So that really is the motivation that the journalist in today's newsroom has to have to confront and deal with. We are holding people's hands, we're making sure we give them all they need to make that transformation, to make that shift, both in terms of tools and also in terms of the software that is needed. Sometimes all that it takes is that instead of, the whole mindset is that you go into a story with. For example, how do you prepare? If you know that I'm going to a conference on internet governance, how do you prepare so that you're able to provide that value when it's needed? When that big speech or presentation is being made, that you actually can report that story live, that you can live blog it. It might mean that you spend a bit more time the previous night preparing, making sure you understand what the issues are. While a few years ago, you have the luxury that if you don't quite get it, you have a few hours to go back and polish up. Today it means that you have to polish up before that story happens. And that then makes you be a bit more competitive in the next gap.
Now, I think the last question I'll ask now before we open up to the public would be, what are you doing to differentiate the content on your digital platforms from the traditional platforms? For instance, a lot of the time we see that the story in the Nation website is basically the same story in the newspaper, but there's a large room available to do more with the story online that's not bound by the physical newspaper or by the time limit of, say, primetime news. So are you doing more to, like I'm saying now, expand what you're doing with the story?
Yes, maybe what you've seen could be some legacy issues. Because back in 1997, when the Nation first debuted on the web, the way it used to happen was basically spade work. You know, the paper will be produced for the next day, then overnight or the following morning, somebody will sit and cut and paste all those stories online. So that happened for quite a few years. A shift is happening where instead of stories appearing first on paper, they're now appearing first on the web or on forums. The fact that that story is being written first with the website or the forum in mind is influencing how those stories are being written. So increasingly, you see a lot more of content of stories being told in a more richer format before you get to see them in the next days. So that's a shift that is happening.
I think at this point you can open up to the crowd. Is anybody who has any questions? I think there should be a microphone going out.
Hi, my name is Karen. My question is, obviously, as you process your news, as you work with journalists, and as you as a company are, how do you make sure that you keep growing your, what is it called, like, the sort of quality for your workforce, for the news that you give out there? How do you make sure that you keep growing into almost perfection, so that you're always growing the journalist skills, you're always still the fast, and you're always putting on the story that's necessary?
We do that by doing the old thing, what they've always done over the years. Train, 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 and train. Yeah, that's what we do. What changes is the content that goes into that training. Yeah. So while before journalists will be taught how to do intros and we were teaching here, the ethics of journalism and things like those, we are today training them how do you deal with the phone, how do you report using WhatsApp, you know? How is Facebook relevant to the journalism? Those are questions we begin to confront, and the things we debate and talk about in the newsroom. Yeah. And then number two, in terms of quality of the work that they have to do, the only way to achieve that is to make sure that everybody finds it very, very clear to know what is that quality that we're all working towards. So that the guideline to that quality cannot be a secret. It must be something that everybody that is a member of that newsgroup knows and is working towards. And we do that through policies. Many of those policies have been published on our website so that our readers know what they are. We do that through our own debates. As stories come through, we talk about them in our newsrooms, and we debate how do we handle the story, how do we deal with it. Sometimes we don't agree, but those conversations help give most of us confidence to deal with the next story when they come through.
Hi, my name is Lina from Lina Connect. I tell inspiring stories about people in business. I have a couple of questions I hope you'll allow me to ask. Number one, we've talked about a trend of people moving towards the use of mobile phones to gain information. And yet, some time back, there was a company that set up in Kenya, in Africa, called InMobi, that then folded. Could you share with us your thoughts about why that possibly happened? The other is, going forward, how do you sleep at night knowing that we bloggers are taking over? What's your strategy to retain the center of power as a media company?
Thank you. Our teacher here used some good English. I forget about the whole question of how do we approach these technologies. Do you use them merely because they're available, or they help us achieve something that we had wanted anyway? The story of M-Pesa, I think, illustrates that very clearly. Yeah. The only reason M-Pesa has been hugely successful is because people were sending money before M-Pesa anyway. Yeah. Some of them had to send them through touts. You know, you go to the bus that goes to your village and you talk nicely to the tout on that bus, the conductor on that bus, and you give him 100 bob. Say, please, when you reach this bus stop in that far land, give it to so and so, they'll be waiting. So M-Pesa came and helped us do that in a much more efficient way. So the focus is never why technology is important. To succeed, the focus cannot be technology per se. It's a question of what need are we serving? What need are we using technology to deliver? So I think that's a question InMobi may probably need to go back to and ask themselves. Even though we were in the mobile space, how come we never got any switchers? How come they didn't find us interesting? Maybe there's a plank they never got right. Yeah. On the second question, power is sweet. It is sweetest in Africa. Yeah. But our perspective into that space is a little different. When you do the trainings that I mentioned before in the newsroom, and we encourage journalists to go on Twitter, go on Facebook, and in that whole social media space, the one pool that many times they have to wrestle with is the urge to be the first with the story. I broke it fast. Everybody wants that. I'm sure you bloggers know much more about that than myself. Yeah. But in the newsroom, we always urge restraint. We say going fast is important, but it's not as important as getting it right. So go fast, okay. But if it is not right, then we have a huge trouble. So basically, you've allowed bloggers to win in the game of going fast. We want to try and win in the game of getting it right. And because of that, we tell our journalists that you are on the side of getting it right. That means that if we find that you are not fast because you are working to get it right, we can forgive you. But if we find that you are fast, but you didn't get it right, there'll be no forgiveness.
May I just add something? I think one of the things that we found about technology is that every time a new technology comes, the world is disruptive. So we get disrupted, and the bloggers have disrupted the space. But I want to disagree. It sounds like we may get into a debate of sorts here with my good friend Churchill. But I want to disagree a bit about the business of being fast and being accurate and all that. I think the blogger serves a different need and does a different thing. And I think there's actually space for everybody. When Churchill was talking, I remember that I think it was in the 30s and 40s and 50s. The newspaper was a technology that came and found us. But we appropriated it. And the kind of newspapering that we were doing, if you look at the liberation press, so to speak, and don't forget people like Jaramogi, Oginga, he was a publisher. Jomo Kenyatta was a publisher. There was another very successful publisher called Henry Moria, who published from 1945 to 1952. And if you look at what those guys were doing, it was so different from what the Standard was doing. And the Standard was a colonial paper, pretty much, but it was following the norms of, hard news lead, etc., etc., but with a very serious slant, of course, towards settler interests. But the Morias, the Odingas, the Kenyatas, they were very partisan. They were very focused on talking about the people, this is what we need, etc., etc. And there's a press officer in the government, I think his name was H. Downs or something. And Downs, who was a colonial press, government officer, said, they've got a press, they're so hopeless, they don't know anything. But the newspapers from these African publishers were moving fast. Why? They served a particular need, but the Standard and other such publications were not serving us at all. And I think I want to equate this situation in a sense to what's going on today. That we have a new technology, the existing technologies have been doing a certain form, and that there's a very important place for that. We want to trust the news, we want to be sure it's accurate, etc., etc. I think what the blogger probably will be doing as we go on is providing more commentary and analysis. And I think we see that already. People like Gadara does, I think, the editorial copy for you guys, but he also runs a blog and he'll get into some very serious things in there. Biko Zulu is a wonderful writer. I think we know Biko Zulu. And Zulu, I think, Biko was part of the 6 million for Jadudi. And in a few days, they raised 6 million for this guy who had a growth in his brain, went to India, etc., etc. But what Biko did there, and he writes for Saturday Nation, but he didn't write for Saturday Nation, that's 6 million for Jadudi. He did that on his blog. So I think everyone has room to play. We just kind of have different defined areas. So that's what I would say about it.
Now, I'm the moderator, but I think it would be irresponsible for me not to comment because I'm also a member of the Bloggers Association of Kenya. So I think I will start with a quote from a very well-known philosopher. His name is Bain. There's a movie called The Dark Knight Rises. And basically, you are born in social. You're merely adapting it. So what I'd like to say is basically, I think our space as bloggers is more in the three types of media that you discussed. There was government, there was broadcast, and there was community. Community generally has been identified by location. Most of the time when she's talking about now community radio, it's a certain physical location. Now what the online space allows us bloggers to do is to write for a community of people with shared interests. So it's not bound by location. So we're able to generate content that is for a specific niche. And you'll find for the most part, traditional media will not do that because they have a very general outlook. But so you'll see, I think the most in-depth coverage of a specific niche that traditional media usually does is business. But now the blogging space allows us to do that across the board. You can do that for fashion. You can basically talk to a community and delve very deep into that content. So I'd like to agree that actually with what Mamboy said is that the space is open for all of us. Yeah. So we can let traditional media continue doing what it is that they're doing, but there's a lot of space for us to speak to communities. So like over here with the tech community, you can actually generate content that is specifically for that community. So I think what we do is that we remove that location-based constraint when it comes to community. Yeah, so I think we had some questions, and I'll try and stop asking questions. And remember, we can use the hashtag NRBuzz. Please do let me know that. Oh my God, I've forgotten your name. It's Sydney. If there are any questions coming from online, but let's have some questions over there. Please introduce yourself, keep it short.
Hello, everybody. My name is Sagwa from Utafiti. We're located at Naila. I just have two questions I would like to ask. We have seen a lot of, we have seen the newspaper survive a lot of over time. We've seen the typewriter, columns, as you had said, they've come and gone. And as you switch online, most of the time, probably you're saying a lot of your audience is switching online and all that. Is that affecting the newspaper circulation? And is that also affecting maybe profits or something? And as you realize that many people are switching online, and you too you're switching online to give them like the news they want. What are you doing like to make sure that you're not being just like any other blog online, but you're giving people, because people, as she had said, the news online is sensational. People want something that is yellow news. I would like to call it yellow news. What are you doing so that you can distinguish, you can put yourself different from them?
What are we doing? Keep making money. Is that the question you're asking? The story of newspaper circulation, the story of newspaper circulation the world over is a raging debate. And it's more severe in the West, in the Western sphere. Asia is a bit of a different story. The newspapers are still growing or flat. In Africa, in most markets also, the newspaper circulation trends still tend also to be flat. But we know, having done newspapers for decades, we know how circulation numbers move. And that knowledge tells us that a time is coming when either it will drop or we take a gradual slip. Yeah. So we are open to that fact. However, we know that we still have a few more years, and we've put our money where our mouths are. Because some of you may remember, just 2 months ago, we did launch a new printing press that cost us a whole of 2 billion Kenya shillings. That's not small investment. But the Nation Media Group invested that amount of money, and they know that they'll get that, they'll recoup that investment and make money out of it. So yes, a time will come when that pool will be much, much smaller, but we still have a few months or a few years to go. Yeah. But coming back to the second part of your question, it's kind of linked to my contribution to the blogger versus mainstream media debate. And we always ask ourselves, what is it that we bring to this table? Yeah. And as you heard before, the space we really want to occupy is that space of trust. That if it came from us, then you can trust it and you can use it. Yeah. But a certain side to that is also that we serve a much larger audience. So that automatically forces us to do an aggregation of sorts. And many times that tends to leave out some niche audiences. But at least the mainstream needs of society, the space we want to make sure we still occupy. And that we listen to that audience to make sure what is it, what are these needs, what are their cries, what are their aspirations, and that we use information and communication to try and help them meet those needs. And for as long as we are doing that, it doesn't matter what medium we are on. It doesn't matter the form or packaging of the messages that you're sending out. So long as those messages speak to those needs, we think we keep relevant. The challenge for us is to make sure that we are with them, we are telling them in a manner that they understand.
Hi, my name is Edward. I have a question regarding monetization with regard to publishing of news. So how exactly do you make money at a time where no one wants to see ads, say like on your website, for example? I, for a fact, block all ads on our websites. So you're probably, most people aren't making money off of advertising. And there are very, very few people, I think, who are willing to pay for your e-paper. So how do the revenues compare, the revenues you get from advertising on your website versus the money you make from subscription to your e-paper? How do the revenues compare? And how long do you suppose you have to continue milking, the hard copy newspapers? How long do you suppose it will be before you're phased out? Also, second question. So one of your competitors is said to have, like, they completely dominated the market. I suppose they have what, 70% of the market share, and the rest will be shared whatever the business happened. So my question is, so what did you miss? What aren't you doing right?
Which competitor is that?
What's that?
Which competitor is that?
Royal Media.
Okay. On TV,
Well,
on radio.
I don't know the details, but I suppose generally.
I was wondering. I was midwifed in print, so I tend to, my mind goes there first. But my colleague here, Chris Ndungu, by the way, is my colleague. He's the guy who writes the numbers for us. Media is a mixed bag, starting with your last question. So while on radio, we might not be number one, on print, across the country, we have 70% market share. Yeah. So it's a mixed kind of nuanced story. If you go into the details, the picture might be a little bit different. Yeah. Monetization. You're the one of the guys we've been looking for. These guys who don't want ads. Because you think we need to talk and give it a few pence so that journalism can keep happening. Yeah. But the only way of making money in media has been that you aggregate audiences, then you sell those audiences to an advertiser who then pays you and you're able to cover your costs and then go back to do the story the next day and keep doing that and make money off it. That we are so far the world over, that is not working efficiently in the online space. Yeah. At least at NMG we are happy. We have a huge digital operation, and that operation makes money. Yeah. So somehow the things we're trying, and they're making enough money for us to cover our costs, and go to the digital. But ultimately, the world is trying many things. Others are saying that since a big chunk of these audience doesn't want to see ads, how do we make them pay for their way? Because if before today the advertiser was paying your fare, and you don't want to see that advertiser pay, you have to find a way for you to then pay that fare directly. So people are coming with all kinds of techniques and tricks, and I'm sure very, very shortly a lot of that will be appearing in this market. Because for as long as we need the stories that these websites carry, somebody has to pay for the read. Today, at least at NMG, I know many of us are asking those questions. How do we make sure that we can still, that this game we're playing, this business we are in, is sustainable, that it can pay for itself? Nobody has the answer as we sit here. Maybe somebody at the IHAB has. That's a fellow we need to have a conversation. Yeah. But in the same way we are crowdsourcing stories today, we are crowdsourcing solutions and ideas to deal with certain questions.
Yes.
So I'm going to ask a couple of questions from people online. One is, what percentage of verified content never makes it onto your platforms? The second one is, do you have any R&D budget not for stories, but for tools. I think this is the point to plug. We have a consulting arm downstairs. And then someone was saying, what role is the media doing to actively promote innovation and entrepreneurship apart from features and applications?
Second question is the easiest.
Please comment on the entry of over-the-top media providers like Netflix.
Most welcome. We'll dance with them. Yeah. Question number 2, R&D budgets. Yes, we do. Think of a clever idea. Let's talk about that. Question number 1 was verified content that is not used. The standard answer to that question is that no good editor leaves a good story. It's as simple as that. So if a story is left, chances there's a limb of it that hasn't yet fully formed. There are aspects of it that are not, clarified. Remember that thing of verification that I spoke about earlier? There has to be a reason. But in today's world of journalism, we are not as constrained for space as we were 5-10 years ago. So a good story will be told, and it will be told well. There's a fourth question. Supporting innovation. I don't know how we would, because the only power we really have is that platform that we give innovators. So the big idea competition that we run in the BD, top 40 under 40, those kind of things. That really is a value that we can bring with the table.
I just wanted to add something on this business of research and development and investment, because I agree with that question. But I feel our media is actually enough. One of the things we've seen in the research is that in this converged newsroom, we still think of the editor and the journalist, the traditional editorial guys. But today, you also need to think about the techie, because the techie is going to help you package. Where before I just typed, zapped it to my editor, and then the graphics designer laid it out. I didn't even need to know that, actually, how to lay out. I just wrote the story and sent it on. But today, a site like BuzzFeed, I think BuzzFeed is, I presume you're familiar with BuzzFeed. It's a very popular site because it's just pictures. I think they've designed it so that it loads quickly, and you have these wonderful galleries of pictures, and you kind of play with content. So I think my suggestion to our media houses is, in your R&D investment, consider looking at greater incorporation, if you're not doing it already, of course, but to work with your websites, because I find a lot of our websites very static, our slideshows very boring, just go, and I just think today we can't afford to be operating. You're also thinking of the mobile platform, even as you're developing that kind of content. So I think if you're crowdsourcing, that's my suggestion for you. But sorry, just one other thought. I saw a comment just now on the hashtag, and it's about how formulaic it says our stories tend to be very formulaic, and we know that, right? Or the usual tricks and games, and they're not really new types of stories. But I think here's another place where this internet and internet of technologies will bring something new, because data is becoming big. People just the internet just gives you a lot of information, and then there's all these databases and numbers. Kenya Open Data is now starting to say the government is giving us numbers. Kenya National Bureau of Statistics is giving us numbers, and who is crunching those numbers, there's some wonderful stories, I think, waiting to be told that I think are more imaginative, more creative, more relevant, and we can still do the God Jubilee thing because we must have those people coming so that we can pay our bills. But I think we can have a greater range of things going on if we looked a little further.
Let's just take a quickly join up. I used to think you're a digital migrant. It's maybe more like a netizen. The last bit of your question, and I think it speaks also to the first bit, is that today in the nation newsroom, we are beginning to have those changes embedded, like participating in storytelling. And the bit about using numbers, go online and search for newsletters. Yeah, you begin to see nation newsletters. Yeah, you begin to see our attempt, our first steps in that space. And there'll be more of that coming through.
Yeah, so I just wanted to pick up on something you actually said about bloggers serving particular niche communities. It's really sort of a question. Are there communities that you feel now are currently underserved that for the budding bloggers in this room might be good areas for them to think about from a content perspective?
Well, that's a good question. I'm going to let Ramadan from the Bloggers Association of Kenya answer that question.
Hey everyone. We found that there are certain areas that are not easy to set up in, like agriculture, health. Basically, there are things that require a certain amount of knowledge, and most people feel that they don't have that knowledge to start with. So those I think it's health, agriculture, education, religion, in those kind of categories. We have very many people writing who are on creative writing. There are other people who are fashion, technology, that kind of thing. Those kind of things. So what you're trying to do is that go around the country training people and stressing that these areas are opportunity areas. There's also money to be made in these areas, either contributing content to newspapers, setting up your own thing. There's quite a bit of money, especially if you have that. Does that answer your question? Sorry? Health, agriculture, education, and
my name is Maurice Siveri. I'm the one who asked the question about what entrepreneurs and creators have to use education features. So I was fortunate enough to be featured on a business day as a full page article on innovation, which is flexible. What I think it's called flexible, it's a quantum government. So what I think they want to be a good thing in helping entrepreneurs, apart from giving us the exposure and the features, you guys interact with a lot of other big shot entrepreneurs and business owners and clients. You could play a role by connecting the two because you could give a feature and you know a person who could help you go to the next step, in the entrepreneurship journey. So I think that is something we should do. Thanks.
I think we take two final questions. There's Rama, this gentleman over here. And,
thanks. Two questions for you, Church. Given the scale that you guys have on digital, as far as your digital presence is concerned, the number of people you have on Facebook, Twitter, and so on, why is it that from the public editor's perspective, feedback from old school consumers who write directly to him has more weight than people who give more or less the same feedback on Facebook or Twitter and so on? Second question. I noticed you're mentioning across your responses, you talk about the nation newsroom, but we both know that it's print newsroom, there's a TV newsroom, and so far, the only media house I know in this country that's trying to converge to a single platform are the Radio Africa guys. I tried it a couple of years ago, raised some cultural issues. What I'd like to hear from you is, over the next 5 years, are there any plans at all to actually collapse all these different units, the print guys, broadcast guys, into one unit that churns out content across all platforms?
I started the most interesting, the last one. Convergence has become a romantic term. But the view we take is that our boss is the audience. The fellow we must always serve, the fellow whose happiness we go out for is that audience. So we do all that expense to making sure that we can serve that audience better. So even though we are NMG, many times we have to go back and ask ourselves, in what space are we interacting with this audience? It's the same fellow we're talking to on TV, the exact same fellow we're talking to on BD, Business Daily. And is this the guy you're talking to on the website? Is it the guy you're talking to on Nairobi News? When you send out Taifa Leo, is it the same guy reading that paper? So once we answer those questions, we come back and ask ourselves, what structures, what workflows serve their interest best? Where we find that one workflow and therefore a converging newsroom in the model that we described would serve two products, that will happen. It has happened before, and I think it will keep happening. Even today, the conversations going on in our newsroom in terms of how much more efficient can we become, because that then drives efficiencies. But we are not going to drive efficiencies for efficiency's sake. We have to make sure that the purpose for which we exist remains solid, that we can deliver that value. If you drive efficiencies for efficiency's sake, then you find yourself being very efficient, but serving no need for the audience. Yeah. The second question was about the public editor. I think we should invite him here. Because you guys are also readers. But I think it's more a question of the patient using the hospital as an example. The patient who comes to hospital and the patient who's feeling pain but is still at home, the level of priority and urgency is a bit different. Yeah. So it's more a question of this reader is feeling so concerned about this issue. They not only commented about it on Facebook, but they went further and wrote an email to him. They went further and made a call. That really is the distinction. It's not that any of those people are less important. It's just a question of maybe this guy is so burning for him, and therefore we need to alleviate that pain a little bit before we get to the next slide.
Let's just say a quick thing on the first question about this business of convergence. It's interesting. I think there's a paper in either the Netherlands or Denmark that actually deconverged. It was converged, it had brought its production to one newsroom, but they found it wasn't working well for them from a money point of view, from the personnel, the editorial personnel point of view, and they actually decided to go back to being a print newsroom and an online newsroom. So I think media houses are finding that convergence was a great idea, but is it working? I'm not sure.
Here from Mobitel. I'd like to know, as we know, hospital pays the bill is advertising. I'd like to know what happens when you have a story that may not be good, that concerns one of the job advertising. How do you handle that? You have counters and
37 guests.
Page 7.
Yeah, full page out.
Yeah, we're going. It's a problem that is as old as journalism is. And those who came before us many, many years ago found a way to deal with it. And that way they say is, they call it the church and state separation. Yeah? That the guys dealing with news, so to speak, are on the side of the church. And no matter what you do, they need to go by their news values. The guys who chase the money on the state side, and they have their own group that chase the money. And then we try as much as possible to make sure that there's no contamination in the space. Even more importantly, and maybe more reassuring for you, is that the only reason any media get advertisers is because that media has audiences. And the only reason any media would have audiences is because that media is serving the interest of that audience. So you would be not quite a smart editor if you shift that rationale. Because if you do what the advertiser wants and your audiences walk away, will that advertiser come back to you tomorrow? And remember, they don't advertise with you because they like you. There's something you have that they're paying for. If you give that away, they won't come back.
In the same way, what happens when they sometimes pay for you? Like we tell them such advertisement on something. Maybe they have we've seen some companies having a roadshow, and it comes with you.
Paying for news is corruption. Yeah. It's as simple as that. And at the nation, if you are caught as a nation journalist receiving money so that you can run stories, the time they call it, there shall be a separation. Thank you.
Just one final question, and then we're going to closing remarks.
Hey, Chacha. I've always wondered, I mean, why does delegation have an e-paper when you have a website? And then also, it's weird how when I'm looking for a story online, and I'm sure that it's in the nation website, I can't find it. Like, or I mean, I have to find it. Look, what I mean is, let's say I'm searching for that particular thing on Google. I can't find it. I have to actually go to the Daily Nation website and use the search function. Then something else, whenever I have Google alerts for certain things, what bloggers Kenya, Big Kenya or something like that, I always get alerts for when Daily Nation content is published on Africa, and not when the content is published on your site. So I wonder why that is. And then for the longest time, your site has done. I mean, I think you had the Daily Nation site was set up for this kind of site, but you've always had like a better ranking, more visitors. I don't get it. Like, you have better content, but they have better ranking. I don't get it. And actually, their site is shit, and yours is better. I don't get it.
I start with the easiest. The last one. Which IBC declared those rankings? Basically, whose rankings are we using to make that judgment? Yeah. Yeah. And you guys are techies. You should tell me how accurate Alexa is. If if today I set up a blog and I wanted to be higher than Alexa, and there are ways I could do that. The other question was what? Google. We have some configuration issues with Google, and it's a long debate we've had, and it goes to some other issues. I'm not at liberty to delve too much on that, and that's why. Yeah, on Google News specific, you find those things. Yeah. And the first question, the e-paper. We go back to his example. Remember, he said that I'm a digital immigrant. I'm trying to adapt. I said she's confirmed that she's a netizen. She belongs there. There's something very sweet and delicious for a certain demographic in this country. Just seeing that newspaper in the shape and form that it is. There are guys, and they happen to have pockets too. For them, that is how news should sound. So it is an audience that we must serve. Now, this disruption has come, it's also disrupting them. So they're holding on to some habits that they've had all over the years. Yeah. We don't know how long they'll hold on to those habits. But for as long as they're there, and that follows, as long as they're hungry for the information we have, we will serve them. But there are also my friend here, the netizens, who says, forget about those photos. I don't even like the layout. If anything, I use the only thing I need is a crossword. We serve them the website. Try to make sure that they have. So that explains the discussion. Sorry?
There are certain things that in the paper that are not on the website. You know, how about offering extra content for subscribers and then they certain content. So in essence, for people who are already used to consuming content, you know, online and not on a downloadable PDF, we can do that, you know, via an app. Obviously, you need to subscribe, you need to pay for that, and then also online, you log in, pay for it with that.
Please remember, Churchill will still be around after this session ends, so we can also talk to him directly, one-on-one. But I also agree, I'd love to see obituaries. Okay, I don't want to see that. Yeah, but obituaries are not online.
Did you say you're a netizen?
Yes. I don't know if you want to take that, or I can introduce your colleague to start off now the session of the final remarks, because I think he said there are some statistics that he wants to bring out. So if you can come to the front, please. So now he will start off now with the finishing remarks.
Hi everyone.
Introduce yourself.
It's Chris. I do marketing digital for Nation Building. So mine is just a mention about a couple of few things, and you will allow me to continue my notes because I might skip some stuff. But I want to jump on Wamadai's question about Nation website versus standard website. Now, earlier on, Churchill said that when technology came, it took the power from the editor to the auditor. It's the same shift that is happening. The power is being taken from the publisher to the advertiser. What does the advertiser need? Conversion. If it's a banner they put on the website, they want at the end of the day is a conversion. So if you are looking for sales, that's what they want, quality. So in the long run, what happens is that right now you can cheat Alexa by a lot of traffic, and you rank very much top. But there are some metrics and qualities that matter in terms of traffic. What is the purchasing power to that for that particular route, that particular traffic, the exiting the intended traffic. So for in the long run, in the short run, it's coming. One of the things have been you notice that NLT is about being more audience centric. The audience is the user. So you're gonna be more focused on user experience. So if the user experience is perfect, that simply means it becomes very easy for us to deliver the advertising. So we deliver very well to the user because the experience is good, the content is good, platforms are good, and you're providing that to a particular consumer, you're talking to the consumer. Then on the next thing about Netflix, a simple question about Netflix and the direct to the TV. The question is, how many people can afford currently to pay one for the internet package above 4 Mbps to pay regularly $10 every month? How many do we have? So that's
Sorry, I was saying.
how many more Amadais do we have? So that answers your question about the direct that there is. So in simple terms, you can.
The statistics.
Yes.
Yes.
The other thing is about NMT revenue channels that expands. Churchill mentioned social media channel. We have about 6 million. That is NMT revenue collectively. YouTube channel, for instance, you look at it, the biggest in Africa, over 2 million page views. The rest coming up, and it has been constant. 200 million page views. There's something else. If you look at something interesting, look at, I know how many know iStats. How many here know iStats? iStats, I believe, is a product of one of the education. And iStats have been doing very excellent work of monitoring how brands are interacting with users on social media. And one interesting metric is that NFT's radio, Nation FM, Daily Nation, and NTV in their respective categories in terms of traffic. That is, it simply tells you how the media is interacting with its offline audience and also how you've taken the leadership in the online space. And you notice that in each and every day, like for instance, right now in this particular forum, the hashtag for events started very early because of the influence that there is. That's why you see that the NMT is able to influence reggae show trend on a Saturday when the internet uses this show. Jamrock, what Jamrock that happens on a Swahili TV threads, something that is quite unusual. Lately, there is this TV program, NTV World. I'm sure you love it. It's quite an order and the thing you would not expect like have a lot of talk. But in a matter of 14 days, they have had 50 million impressions that are organic. No money pumped, organic, just why? Because it's new air on a channel that is social. So in short, that's what I'm saying in terms of that thing online. R&D, what do you expect is beyond even the UX that I said earlier, advertising using AI, artificial intelligence. So that's how much NMT is investing in technology. I don't know whether I've left something out.
Then you'll be here. People can talk to you directly after this. Once we start, of course, now the session to take care of our time. Wambui, any parting shots?
Thanks. Yes, I think I want to say that it is interesting to hear from Chris the numbers, but I want to say that this game is it's not just a numbers game. I think it's a content game. I think it's an access game. I think because of the disruptions, I'm seeing new players. I think we have the opportunity for us. I know I said that a little earlier, but I agree with the idea that a lot of what we content-wise we see is formulaic. I think there's actually room for starting to do new things because there are new people interested in doing new things. And this business of the numbers game is just one side of the issue. But I also want to, I dare say to NRG and other commercial media that I think they have the opportunity to do a little more, especially because they have the resources to do it. And even in terms of content, that there is greater opportunity to experiment further, new forms of storytelling, new types of stories, etc., etc. So that even as they're saying we are fast, we are this, I still feel that there's kind of an old school thinking there. And yes, let's be old school, but let's also be a bit new school in the process of incorporating the power of this new technology.
Thank you. Churchill, I'll take a shot. Just to say thank you for listening to me. I know listening is never an easy thing to do. We've been here for quite some time. Yeah. And knowing that you guys are the keys, you're used to interaction. I'm sure the later bit of it was probably more interesting. This is a physical event. At some point it will end. But we hope the conversation can continue. We at Nation are reachable. We also know that there's a particular way we've always done our journalism. Something tells us that that too will come from at some point. We always look out for what is this new way of doing it. Some of those answers may as well be this one. Yeah. So please feel encouraged to connect with us and feel bold to annoy us.
His Twitter handle, by the way, is Otieno C. Just in case you want to shoot him something quickly in 140 characters. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank you for coming here today. Thank you for giving us your time. Both the people here who are physically here and the people who are watching us on the live stream. Thank you very much. I think at this point I can close the session and invite you all to a small meal, courtesy of I Have Research. So thank you very much for coming here today. Please continue to put this conversation online on the hashtag NRBuzz. Her Twitter handle is Mwalimu W. His is Otieno C. He has asked you guys to give him ideas, to reach out to him. Please do. I think you may have to teach him how to open his DMs. Yes, so there's a long form instead of 140 characters. So ladies and gentlemen, I've been your host for the evening already. Please have a lovely evening, and I'd like you to proceed in an orderly fashion to the next session. And please remember that we are here, all of us available for any questions that you may have that you maybe are feeling as a good. There you go. Thank you. Have a lovely evening.
I was sitting right there. That's my.
Are you among the Yes. What are you?
You're on TV. So there's no R&D budget in short term. It's in the northern area. You see now we have yeah. Were you involved? Yeah, I was involved in the I was involved in like Europe. Oh, the one you showed me. One of the ones actually the way they published on Facebook.
I need to see that. Yes. Okay, when I'm next around, I'll come back.
Did you take as input the whole article or just the headline? Oh, so you generated the headlines from the article. Wow, that's pretty cool. Oh.
Can I do this here?
Sure. So how did you ensure that it just didn't?
You know where Anderson is?
In the trust.
Huko. Kuna mtu anaweza kupita. Someone has my bag. Tess left somebody with my bag.